Go live. We're live. Hey, hello everyone.
Hello.
Hey. I never know if I'm saying hello to the audience or to you guys. It's one of these weird things. Welcome to the mess we're in, where we talk about the increasingly optimistic fight for women's rights with two men and one woman. It's been another fantastic week. The good news just keeps coming, you know.
And wow, feels great.
It really does. You know,
it does. It does. I think the mermaid thing was interesting. Well, the Department of Education, anyway. I mean, let's go with that. That they issued some really sort of decent guidelines, didn't they, about what could be said in schools, and that schools shouldn't work with organizations that promote certain things. And one of those things was Born in the Wrong Body.
Yeah.
Which obviously we all thought was great, because we've seen this so much and we've been sort of fighting against it. But the astonishing turnaround was absolutely, I did not see that coming.
No.
I think mermaids themselves, didn't they? They tweeted saying,
"Of course, no one was born in the wrong body."
And I think it was that, of course, that made everyone really just sort of step back and say, "This is so dishonest. This is so dishonest."
Yeah.
But I mean, this organization is, people are trusting them with their children, and for them to immediately turn around and say, "No, of course this isn't the case," when it's been promoted again and again and again, I thought was terrible. Now, they did follow it up with, I think after they saw the backlash, they did follow it up with a statement saying, talking about wrong body and saying, "Yes, we have promoted it in the past. However, we've moved on." Now, that was okay. I was okay with that, because that's true. But to start with the complete, I mean, I can't think of another way of putting it, but a complete lie that, of course, they don't believe this, was what I think got me. It made me think, this is not an organization that you should trust.
Oh, the parents. You can imagine all these parents that were on board who were transing their kids as a result of Mermaid's guidance, and who were absolutely affirming their children every day at night before bed that they were born in the wrong body. Now having to go, "Oh fuck, I was wrong. I was never supposed to say that in the first place,"
Yeah.
Which is awful, isn't it? I mean, it's just horrible. Dreadful.
I don't know where they can go. I mean, I think they just revealed themselves to be what we've been telling people they are, like, all along, which is they're a bunch of parents, some of whom obviously have Munchausen's, and are projecting this stuff onto their kids. Others are homophobic, that's clear from certain things. Even Susie Green's TED Talk, you can just see the homophobia all through the TED Talk. It's extraordinary that it's still up. And that people, and that all this, I always say this, but the TED audience were like, "Oh, what a brave woman." She gave no explanation for what it meant that her kid was trans, except that the kid played with girls' toys and liked sparkly dresses. That was it.
And more than that, in addition to that, and that her husband at the time, or partner, I don't know if they still are, really didn't like it, and they wanted to take them all away. I mean, it was.
They
astonishingly candid.
The village people thing was the worst. That's the nail in the coffin. To say my effeminate son will remind me somehow of one of the village people who were butch, masculine, gay stereotypes. It was a clear, naked, like, I don't want my son to be gay,
Yeah, it did feel like that. It did feel like that.
How else could you possibly? What does an effeminate boy have to do with the village people other than being gay?
Well,
it's a fair point.
I tell you, the thing that always got me was her saying, "What do you think, boys?" At the picture of her daughter, supposedly in the swimsuit. Who would do that to their daughter? What are you doing? It's almost like, oh, look, see, she's normal now. Everything's fine now.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think we're going to look back on this period like it's a kind of horror film that kind of acted itself out in real time.
I think we've got to be really, really, really careful how people look back on this period, because I think it's very clear that there's revisionism going on already right under our noses.
Yes.
And mermaids had obviously deleted, to be fair, it is possible that they had deleted nothing, and I had never seen them say "born in the wrong body" on their website. This is very possible. However, somebody did find one of their training materials which said, and it said the words "effectively," and maybe the word "effectively" is in there. Effectively, a boy's brain in a girl's body, or a girl's brain in a boy's body. That was their training materials to teachers that somebody had found and screenshotted. So they clearly have been saying this.
But let's not forget, it's not just about the tagline, "born in the wrong body." The advice from the Department of Education said anybody who's encouraging a discrepancy between your gender identity and your body is bad. And they can't deny that they've been doing that. Even though they've been sort of distracting us with this emphasis on that single, slogan, "born in the wrong body," their entire modus operandi is certainly out of the new bounds, according to the Department of Education. There's no way they're getting back into schools at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I think that's true. So I think that there are two things going on. Yes. So first of all,
sorry, as usual, I can't get my hair to do anything other than look.
That's fine. You play with your hair there, Graham.
You go ahead. You go ahead, and I'll try and fix it while you're talking.
So I do think that it's very important that we now actually see screenshots, because this revisionism actually really shocked me. So I was suggesting.
Well, it's not.
Take screenshots of everything to do with puberty blockers, because that, I'm sure, once they're, at some point they say, this maybe wasn't such a great idea, and they'd be like, no, we didn't say that. Yeah.
Everyone should be taking screenshots of all of this stuff. Especially, I'll tell you another thing that's going to still not working. What the hell is that now? I'll tell you another thing that I really think people should keep an eye on. I saw today that Katie Montgomery, who's the trans activist who got GNC Centric chucked off Twitter. Katie Montgomery said something like, "I know. Sorry,
I saw it. It's astonishing."
Yes. I know gender critical believe that people are gifted with some kind of magic, unmeasurable, immutable sexed soul at conception, but there's just no evidence for that, mate. What? They were the ones coming up with the idea of a soul being born in the wrong body, not us. And so,
you could change that and take out the word sex and put gender, and that is them. However, that is not us, because we don't believe in a gendered essence. We believe simply in a sexed body. That is it. It's a complete lie.
Yeah. And what they're gently trying to do, Katie, with their tweet there, is ascribe the opinions they had to us, so that we look like the crazy ones. But look, thankfully, we do have all the receipts, so. But keep, everyone should keep them, and everyone should have them handy, because I think we're going to need them. We're going to need tweets about puberty blockers. We're going to need tweets about born in the wrong body. We're going to need all these receipts, and I hope that these people delete their accounts and get off the internet, because they do not deserve the space. They do not deserve the space. Sorry, Helen. The last thing I was going to say was fucking Rachel Rooney. They tried to destroy Rachel Rooney's career. She is a children's author who wrote a book called My Body Is Me, and they tried to destroy her career.
It is the most
beautiful book.
I went to the talk that she did in the feminist conference that we went to, and I went to that one, and she read it out, and we all collectively said the refrain every time she got to it. I am my body is me. Something was sort of wonderful thing to be. And it was so lovely. And the pictures, that's what I could not get over, the drawings, the inclusiveness of the drawings. She had thought of everything in that book to be as inclusive as possible. And then to get all of that awful.
And to get fellow children's authors to condemn her and to call her a bigot and to get their followers to demand that, I don't know,
Yes.
she lose her publisher and stuff like that. They should delete their accounts, get off the internet. You make the internet a poisonous place, and you need to go away.
I was thinking, if I get some time, what I'd like to do, because I've had my Twitter account here, sort of talking about this since 2011. That's 10 years, and I never delete any tweets.
Yeah, no, I've got mine.
I've got any spelling mistakes, and so I might just go back and go through the timeline of how things evolved, how the arguments evolved, what we were getting back at us. Now, it's going to be slightly hard because probably most of the accounts that I've interacted with, I get blocked. I get blocked and blocked. However, I think that history would be very, very interesting to have written down as some sort of timeline, so that we can see what happened at what point and what
arguments.
It's
really important because so many people have been banned and their accounts are gone. Like all of the Graham, I think you have a copy of most of your old Twitter account.
No,
once somebody gets banned, their tweets are completely destroyed. They're lost to history. And this is an important part of our history. So it's really upsetting that so many people on our side have been vanished completely,
However, I will say this, right? I became involved in a number of fights before this one, and I am no longer sure that I was on the right side of some of them. I think I oversimplified certain fights in a tribal way, much like the people who attacked me did. Like Gamergate is a good example. I think Gamergate, I used to follow the line of all these people who I realized later, like Secret Gamer Girl, who actually looks like one of Gandalf's friends. And he was, I was kind of agreeing with this guy, thinking that he was a woman being abused online, and he wasn't.
Yeah.
He was, what I mean? And there were a lot of examples of this, and I realize now that I was being groomed. I was being groomed to accept certain things. I remember, for instance, in the early days, I remember the argument that there's always been trans people. They're just getting brave to come along now, And I remember reading that and thinking, oh, okay, is that what it is? All right, I guess so, And then, the more I looked into it, the more I realized this is bullshit. They're talking about people who are drag acts or people who are gender non-conforming, like Stormé de Larvery. The more I looked into it, the more I realized it was nonsense. But I was influenced by those people. I was influenced by my Twitter feed. And I now wonder, I mean, I really have become the opposite of who I was about 10 years ago in terms of...
But I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, I don't. I'm happy.
That's a learning experience, isn't it? And actually, it is interesting. And I think we touched on this last week. I was actually going to wear my T-shirt today, but I've only just finished work. My No Page 3 T-shirt, because I was remembering some of the arguments I used to have online. And I think we said last week I was much more using sort of an emotive argument, and not necessarily, and then getting really frustrated when people just wouldn't accept my sort of argument from authority as being a woman, despite the fact that I still think I was right. It's not necessarily an argument that washes very well.
Yeah. No. I that's it. And also there were, I remember I would one of the things I used to do a lot was I used to say there's no funny right-wing people, which I kind of think is slightly true in a weird way. Although, no, I tell you what, that's not true, because Douglas Murray is right-wing and he is very funny. He's one of the funniest writers out there, I think. But I used to say it just because I hated the right. I blamed them for climate change. I blamed them, not for climate change, but for climate change denial, which meant we weren't doing anything about it. And I just thought, well, if you're on the right, you're evil. You're just evil. And I had that mindset. And then this thing happened, and I realized how many evil people there were running alongside me. You're like, oh yeah, we're on the right side of history. And you turn to your left and you see Owen Jones, and you think, oh fucking hell, maybe I'm not. So I don't know.
It's a lot more complicated now, the right-left thing, for sure. I was the same, very much an ideologically left all the way, very hostile to the right. And now I just realized it's a little more complicated than that. I mean, I still hold a lot of my same positions, though, on my issues. I haven't changed my position on any issues.
I think the word progressive is useful.
With climate change. Yeah, I like progressive. But I still want to hold on to left. I still say that I'm on the left because I still think there's hope for reforming the left, that it's just taken a sort of a bad turn, a detour. But it can get back on track, is what I think.
I think people just thought that I think one thing that happened was people thought that the best way to react to the two great right-wing horrible achievements of the last few years, which is Trump's presidency. I mean, he's had very few achievements himself, but that getting him into power was a hell of an achievement for right-wing lunatic trolls all over the world. And Brexit was another huge right-wing victory, And I think I've said it before, but I think the left just went a bit mad, and they overreacted, and they created a space where they made up all the rules. So you look at the footage from the Democratic Socialist Convention with the personal point of privilege, Jeremy Blah, he, him, and they're all living in this world where everyone else is thinking this is, this is how people speak now. No one outside of the hall speaks like that,
No.
So they've created a kind of a second reality where Trump isn't in power, and where their most wildest dreams of queering the discourse and so on have come true, but they once they hit the real world, they dissipate. That's why the word cis, after being in use for how many years? 15 years now? 10 years?
It has
no traction. It has no traction. But I'll tell you what does have traction. SJW has traction. People say that because they recognize it and they see it. Social justice warrior and woke and virtue signaling. These things have traction because they are based on truth. Whereas cis is not based on anything. It's a nonsense word. It's a word, as Norm Macdonald said, it's a word to make normal people feel marginalized.
Very good.
Yeah.
I want to change the subject onto.
Go on then.
If that's okay. Just thinking about it when you were talking about the left, and so Joe Mom seems to have wandered back into the debate like he does, and I was alerted to this because I'm blocked, but he seems to have tweeted this morning, and he is talking about J.K. Rowling here. Meanwhile, most remarkably of all, the right-wing press portrays an amateur hobbyist, insulated by her wealth from any real consequence, as victim, and just flat ignores the day-to-day lived reality of the thousands of children whose lives she makes more difficult.
Jesus Christ.
It's just the most egregious sentence. I mean, what does he mean here? An amateur hobbyist? Is he positioning himself as some sort of professional in this area? I mean, he's a QC. He's like a tax QC, isn't he? I mean, he's obviously got some personal connection here. I suspect that somebody close to him has a trans child, and it's completely blinding him.
Well, famously, his first entry into this debate was on our side, and he had to.
I remember.
He deleted, backtracked, and apologized.
But then there was an abject apology about it, and then he went right in the other side. But then he carries on saying, anyway, the Good Law Project won't stand by whilst the healthcare needs of thousands of children are sidelined by prejudice.
Yeah, you know what? Oh, sorry, Helen. Go ahead, Helen.
Is he? I mean, he's either. I mean, he can't actually believe that anything J.K. Rowling thinks about trans children is because she is prejudiced against them. Prejudiced against who? Like children, gender non-conforming children? It doesn't make any sense. He cannot believe that. And if he doesn't believe it, then he's just lying. So he's either
the worst part
anywhere, or he's deliberately lying. Either way, he doesn't
it's the healthcare part, though, that they're being denied proper healthcare. Healthcare means taking care of these children and doing what is best for them. And he is just making this assumption that putting these children onto sex change pathways is the only thing that is proper healthcare for them. And giving them, love and support and watchful waiting and just letting them be themselves is not healthcare. He literally believes that announcing a child as trans, making sure they're on a pathway to have, their genitals inverted by the time they're 20, and giving them a permanent lifetime of being medical patients is good for them, because they're so underneath all of this. When you look at it, it sounds like this is somebody who kind of pities gender nonconforming children. There's this undercurrent of pity
that he feels there's something wrong with them.
There's something wrong with these poor, pitiful gender nonconforming children, and they need all this medicine because it's just so sad. Instead of saying, there's nothing wrong with these children. They live happy, healthy lives. They will if you leave them the F alone.
Honestly, the whole thing, like everything that he says there, you can pick apart, and each comment by itself.
I'd go further than that, Helen. I would say that him and his opinions are the things that are endangering and harming children. If you take his tweet about and what he says that J.K. Rowling is doing to children, that's what he is doing to children. He is I better be careful.
And I think it is, and I think it is a problem because people do talk about it in terms of healthcare and it's necessary. I had an argument just on a Saturday night or something, just with some person who'd replied to somebody about this, and they were pushing this, puberty blockers is sort of fully reversible, and I was saying about infertility and lack of sexual function, and this person who was. It turns out that they were 64 and they were really, really pushing puberty blockers for kids. And they said, "Oh, what do you mean lack of sexual function?" And I said, well, for instance, look at Jazz Jennings, sort of one of the first to go on puberty blockers very, very young, and then on to cross-sex hormones, who had no, as it was awfully said, material in order to create a sort of pretend vagina. Yes, and this person didn't know. And when I said, well, look at Jazz Jennings, their answer was, oh, well, one swallow doesn't make a summer. And it's the callousness, the absolute lack of care and responsibility. It's so irresponsible to be advocating for this when you really haven't got fucking clue what you're talking about. Yeah. It's just dreadful.
Also,
it makes me very angry.
How does I notice it's very unattractive. How does Joyland Mom how does Joyland Mom think?
I'm sorry, it's going down in my big book of grievances again. Honestly,
she's got a big book of grievances, Arty. I sometimes
for the third time you're in there, Graham.
Ironic sexism is sometimes.
I'm gonna give away a comment I'm gonna post later on my blog. So I'm really earning no money twice. No, that's anyway. I won't go into that. But the thing is, how does Joyland Mom? How is he going to argue his case in court when he can't even answer basic questions on Twitter? Every time someone says to him, Joyland, what's your definition of a woman? Or something easy like that, he blocks them, So he has absolutely no answers. What a strange man. Seriously. Like what an odd man.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying before. I've said a few times, which is that it's such a selfish position to take. And it's one that I think people wear on their sleeves quite happily, saying, I know somebody. Talk to trans people. I know somebody. Because I know somebody, I'm now going to advocate that women give away all their rights, their sport, their spaces, that children should have puberty blockers simply because I have now got a personal stake in it.
Yeah, it's
selfish.
It's the Lisa Nandy angle. Someone said of Lisa Nandy, I hope her constituent is okay. We haven't heard from them in a while. Every time Lisa Nandy talks, she talks about her constituent, and it's like, well, 123 women are murdered globally every day. There are certain things that we need to do to make sure that they're protected as possible. And one of them is not letting men in fucking women's prisons. Have you seen Beverly Kardashian in Ireland? Oh boy,
no, Barbie Kardashian.
Barbie Kardashian. Oh my God. Oh my God.
No, obviously this I mean there's obviously questions there, and I think they are being asked how is this. Now I read today, I think the press embargo was because of their age as opposed to the fact that they were trans.
How old
because they were like under 18
what? All of that cosmetic
under 18
surgery?
or stroke 18.
That's really disturbing.
But that's what I read.
And I will also say that I spoke to my friend Stella about this, and Stella says that you know, this is someone who has come from a dreadful environment. The early life has been awful.
Yes, it sounds
so
awful.
and so forth. However, we still need to protect women from him. He was driving home with a care worker, and he dug his fingers into her eyes, I think, or clawed her hair. No, it was her hair. He pulled clumps of her hair off, you know, and was found with it in his pocket or something like this. This is not someone who can be in a woman's prison, you know.
No, and this goes right to the whole difference between feeling fragile and being vulnerable to outside attack. These people have often, you know, a lot of people, they've got a lot of issues to work out. Sometimes people become trans because they have mental health problems. You know, they had horribly abusive childhoods, and they're trying to dissociate from themselves by adopting a new identity, running to something that seems different to them. Like, look, I'm a new persona, I'm a new sex. But sometimes it's just people who they're whatever it is, their autogynephilia, their gender dysphoria. Transitioning can lead to great amounts of mental health problems and great amounts of guilt and shame that needs to be worked out. And that makes them feel very vulnerable and very, you know, they're liable to lash out at people and liable to attack. But they don't understand that's not women's fault. You know, women have a right to spaces separate from them because they're male, and they have to understand that. And their own feelings of guilt and shame and their high likelihood of, you know, harming themselves is a problem they need to work out with mental health, you know, and there's a mental health issue. It has nothing to do with women, but they're just laying it all on women. And I see it every day on Twitter, people saying, you know, J.K. Rowling's bad because, and then it switches from murder to suicide, right? They just always swap. They start off with people are being murdered, and then they're like, she's causing them to kill themselves. No, their mental health problems are causing them to harm themselves. This is not women doing this. Women are just standing up for their rights within law. You know,
if you want to have if you want to waste an afternoon, ask any of these people criticizing J.K. Rowling to tell you her top 3 transphobic things she said. You know, or even one. Just tell me, just use quotes. So it's her quote, and put what she said that's transphobic.
No, it's just harm. It's just harm. That's all I get.
And they always say the same thing. I'm not here to educate you. Google is right there. Why don't you use it yourself? Yeah, the answer, they don't fucking know. All these people who hate her, they have no idea why. It's the most extraordinary thing. And I think that once this becomes known as what I really think it is, I think this is the first internet mass delusion, the first mass delusion that was spread by the internet. I think there's an argument for QAnon being the second, or being around about the same time, but this is definitely, it's like the satanic panic. If the satanic panic was on the internet, it would have spread all over the world, you know. But really, it kind of, I think, I could be wrong, but I think it only contained itself to certain, you know, more evangelical places in the U.S. You know, it didn't really spread to the coasts. But if the satanic panic had been online, and as we know, someone involved in the gender ideology, I can't remember her name.
I think it's Diane Aronsaf, but it might have been Olsen Kennedy. But I'm pretty sure.
No, it's Diane. It's Aronsaf. Yeah. She was one of the players during the Satanic Panic, and now she's pushing gender ideology.
I think she did her PhD in the Satanic Panic, didn't she? That was her dissertation.
Right. But my point is, like, there's you know, there's a wider conversation that's going to have to be had after this, which is, how do we stop ourselves as a society, as a species, from falling for attractive but silly ideas that are spread online? You know, like
it's a good question.
We need to inoculate ourselves against them, and one of the ways I'm kind of trying to do that is, even if they, like, people have been saying bring back Glinner and stuff on Twitter, but I don't know if I want to go back on Twitter. I think that thing of following a lot of people and hearing the same kind of arguments from many, many people, it's almost like not in terms of their politics, but in terms of the thing. It's almost like being a Fox News viewer, because on Fox News, all the presenters, they're given the same things to say.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the phrase for it is.
Yeah, but they're all like, the messaging is on Messenger.
The messaging, yes, the messaging is very tightly controlled, and online the messaging is just as uniform without it even needing to be controlled.
No,
all these people, like the Matilda woman, what's her name?
Mara Wilson,
Kate Beaton, and all these people, Michael Cooperman, and all these people, they all come out with the same thing. Most marginalized people, most vulnerable, blah 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 blah. All based on nothing. All based on fake.
Yeah,
fake
what? We've known this. I remember in 1995, like before Wired magazine existed, before Internet Explorer, it was still Netscape, the very birth of the internet. Somebody was talking about how the internet is going to lead everyone to end up in their own ideological silos, because people will be able to have access to so much information. They're going to seek out the information that confirms their own biases, and they're going to cluster in groups where they just stick to their own pine. So this person was saying you're going to see extremist nationalism. You're going to see white supremacy come back, because these people are just going to stick, Holocaust denial. People are just going to stick within their own bubbles, and there's going to be so much information. It's not going to educate everyone. It's going to lead everyone to their own little isolated bubbles. That was 1995. I was reading that. And goddamn if it isn't exactly right.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you an interesting thing that happened. I was talking to Stella about her letter in the Times this weekend. Stella O'Malley
wasn't that great?
It was nice to see lots of people signing. Yes, and I was delighted to see my old writing partner Arthur Matthews sign. That was particularly.
Yes, and I also saw that J.K. Rowling had only seen it today, and she was very grateful and thankful for really, it was a really sort of heartfelt thread that she did about it.
Yes. I know. Have I forgotten my point? Oh yes, no.
I know you were talking about it.
Yes, they spoke. They spoke to one person in particular. I can't say who it is, but they spoke to one person in particular who just wanted to know more and was asking questions about it. And they said someone told me about a weightlifter who was in the women's thing and
Hubbard.
And won, and this person said, "Is that true?" And my friend who was talking to them said, "Yes, that is true. That was Hubbard, and told the story." And the thing about that is, I found that interesting. Is that true? We are now in a position where we really don't know what's true anymore. With Trump on one side, and with the American media pumping out trans women or women on the other side, you have a kind of a wave of unreason. And it's up to every individual to find out what the fucking truth is.
Yes. And I think one of the problems is that we are so used to fake news now and extreme news that actually when these things come out and they are actually true, people are like, oh yeah, I don't believe that. That's obviously not true because it's insane.
Yeah. Well, my friend, lovely Faintly Falling in Dublin, Stephen. I really recommend, if you're still unfortunate enough to be on Twitter, follow Faintly Falling. But Stephen said he was telling a friend about it the other night, and he said he saw himself in the third person telling him all this mad stuff. Well, there's some men and they say they're lesbians and they get angry if lesbians don't want to go out with them. And just saying it out loud makes it sound like you're the crazy one. We know this well. We've had this problem for years. It's like people just think we're crazy because we're telling them all this crazy shit.
Yes.
But anyway, yeah. So, what else happened? Any other fun things during the week?
Well, that's a lot.
I guess it is. Yeah. Oh yeah, no. Let me read something out to you. It's on something we said early on. Anya Palmer, who's Anya Bike on Twitter, She was talking about the advice that has been given to teachers that you shouldn't tell them, teachers shouldn't tell kids they've been in the wrong body. And Anya Palmer tweeted, the guidance, absolutely necessary. My nephew's entire year was told to call a particular girl by a boy's name and to use he, him pronouns, except in the presence of her mother.
That's just so dystopian. It's insane.
And another thing that I've heard from more than one person is that one of the kind of principles of grooming, okay, is separate the child from the parents.
Absolutely.
See if you can get some sort of wedge between the child and the parents. And now you've got the fucking state doing it,
And they're saying not only that, separate I can understand the principle, or the supposed idea is that, parents can be transphobic and not want their children to be trans. So, but they turn that into, maybe you want to have a transphobic parent too. The default assumption is that all parents are evil and hate their trans children. And you must protect any trans kid from their parents at all costs. Yeah. That's just outrageously insane.
And you see it all the time on Twitter, women like me saying, talking, you've got to be careful around children and what children want. And you get people saying to you, God, I hope you never have kids. Or your kids must hate you. Or I hope if you had a trans kid, you'd throw them out onto the street. Just absurd things about, like you said, the default assumption is that you're just evil.
The case I've been following in Canada, I'm trying desperately to write a piece about it, but I just haven't got friggin' time. But it's
you were going to write a piece for me, weren't you, Arty?
I was. I think it's still within the time frame. It's not old news yet, so I'm going to try. Oh, okay. I think I still can, but it's just the most. I don't even share. I want to share too many details because I'm going to try to write this up tonight if I can. But it's the most scandalous story I've ever heard in my life about two parents who love their child who is trans and how the state is interfering in such a heavy-handed way. It will honestly knock your socks off.
Oh my God! Yes, they're trying to trans the kid against the wishes of the parents. Yes,
and now they're trying to put the father in jail for 5 years.
Yes, write that piece, Arty.
Some of the details are so shocking. There's just there's a scandal around orphanages in BC and the government's complicity. There's a scandal around the school choosing the child's trans name. The child didn't even choose to transition. The school chose it for the child. It's just unbelievable.
What?
Yep.
Oh, someone just quoted something. This is very true. And Arty did a brilliant video on this. Arty, what was that video called that you did where you made this very point that Lika is making here?
The trans is something you do, not something you are.
Yes, I would Google that and look at Arty's video about that. It's it's very, very brilliant. There was something else I want to drag it kind of around back to something that I think is very important that we all should bear in mind, right? So Mermaids is falling apart. Their whole kind of philosophy is now revealed. It's revealed they're making it up as they go along. And God now knows how many lives they've ruined in the process. They're going to come down, I think, at some point, and they're going to, and Stonewall will have to answer as to why they were so tied to them and so on. But the other thing that I think is worth paying attention to is all the people like Paris Lees and Katie Montgomery and all these trans rights activists who are trans themselves, who said things along the lines of mermaids do vital work. Because another one of the cliches you hear a lot is that, oh, why didn't you speak to a trans person? Or why not ask a trans person about this? And this proves that these so-called experts are just as ideological and just as, they're just as... well,
they're more ideological, aren't they, really? I mean, the whole thing is built on extreme ideological position.
But I guess all I'm saying is I think that's now an important thing to remember. Yes. The mermaids thing is the Jenga block that everything else is built on, I think, in England anyway.
Well, I think it is certainly for the children. I mean, I do see there are two distinct sort of arms of this, aren't there? There is older people transing and saying, we are women, you've got to let us into your spaces and your sports. Plus then the need for the older people to have the kids to kind of validate that it's something that they are, as opposed to something that they have done.
Yeah. Yes.
So, where was I? So yes, so there are two arms here. Hopefully, the kids one, which is I think the most dangerous one, will start to dissolve here. I mean, it needs a complete radical overhaul of how, I'm sure there are absolutely kids who have dysphoria, just like there are kids who have anorexia, and they need, and they need a lot of help.
Yeah. And there are more now. I do think it's true that there are many, many more now suffering dysphoria because of the internet.
Most people, if you didn't know of the concept of dysphoria, you would never have gotten it. It's exactly like anorexia, and especially these kids. Most of the time, they decide they're trans, and then they get dysphoria. They decide they want to be trans. They decide that's an identity that appeals to them. And then they start looking at their bodies and going, oh my gosh, my body's wrong. And then they fixate and they ruminate, and then they develop dysphoria. First, the kid says, yes, I want to join the trans club. This is fun. And then they develop dysphoria. So if it weren't for the fact, and this is in adults too. I think it was Debbie Hayton said the same thing. She'd always experienced autogynephilia, but it wasn't until she saw this massive explosion of people transitioning. That's when her feelings became unmanageable, and it blew up into full-on dysphoria. Right. So even adults, they don't feel dysphoria until they're exposed to these ideas.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I threw you a little bit there, Helen, by showing you this comment, but I think this is exactly the thing that I think you no longer have to take from anyone. You're not educated enough to talk about this subject. We know now that the so-called experts, the Paris Lees of the world, and that who's that lunatic who writes for the Independent?
To be fair. We kind of knew this anyway. We were pretty convinced of this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But my point is, it is one of the.
Now it's obvious.
It's one of the tactics they use to shut you up.
Yeah.
Don't fall for it. You have just as much right to talk about this as anyone else in the world. I got into this because I have women in my life I love. And I never liked seeing women bullied in any circumstance. That's why I got into it, and I have just as much right to talk about it as everyone else,
Well, I think Joe Moore would be calling you an amateur hobbyist here, Graham.
Oh my God.
Well, at least you're not an amateur fox killer or whatever.
I know. Poor old fox. Maybe the fox asked him what. Maybe the fox asked him what a definition of a woman was, and he just thought,
Yeah, interesting.
Listen, that feels like a bit of a natural out. I know we're a bit early, but has anyone else got anything else before my hair leaves my head?
I do have one thing that I just got into quite just by chance last night. It was a throwaway comment. It was around the letter. There were lots more celebrities sort of saying and me, and it was so nice to see that lots of people were saying, "Oh, thank you so much." So I said to somebody, I can't even remember who it was, "Thanks, that's great." And some chap just replied to me, "TERF." Now, I mean, it's just the most astonishing thing. I thanked a man for standing up for a woman, and he just comes back with TERF. So, I kind of left it. I said, "Oh, with a very well done argument, that's really got me." But he came back with, "Oh, it's because you're so bigoted," whatever. And so I got into it with him, and I was saying, "Look, you've called me by a very clear, I think, misogynistic term of abuse for simply saying this." And he then said, what Judith Butler said in that argument, "Oh, TERF is not a slur."
Yeah,
and you're like, "Oh, come on. So I felt like I had to explain to him. So I sent him the TERF is a slur website, where you've got threat after threat after threat of violence, sexual torture, and death against women. It's just the most horrendous thing. I once read every single one of them, just because I wanted to make sure what I understood what I was sending. And I read every single one of them, and they are horrendous. So I said, "Look, this is how it's used." And he said, "I bore those comments, but turf is not a slur. And you're like, surely you can think of other words which in themselves, may have been benign, but because of their usage have morphed into terms of abuse. This is how it works.
That's how they get invented. That's how slurs are created.
Yes.
If it punctuates the end of a sentence in which you're trying to insult someone by using the word, that word becomes a slur.
I bet Huckleberry Finn didn't think it was a slur to use the N word, all the time. Yeah. I don't think
this is how it works. But there's more. I was saying to him, look, I think sometimes it's worth explaining these things. I didn't think I was ever going to change his mind, but for other people who read, is that he can use it, and in it, like, he's got plausible deniability. He can say, well, I'm not sending you threats. But the fact is that it's coupled with these threats all of the time. So he's literally getting other people to do his dirty work for him. He can be like, it's just a descriptor, knowing full well that it's a silencing tactic. It's something to sort of threaten women by saying, look, this is what you'll get. I will label you with this, and I can wash my hands and say, oh, I'm just using it because, like an acronym, knowing full well what other people are using it like. And as somebody else sort of pointed out, if you weren't using it as a slur or a term of abuse, why did you just say it? Were you just sort of suggesting, oh, look, here is a trans-exclusive radical feminist. I'm just going to throw that out at her. It was such an obvious term of abuse. To then pretend that it wasn't I thought it was worth pointing out to him what he had done. And because he wouldn't accept it, then I quote-tweeted it so that everyone could see what he had done.
I do genuinely wonder whether, I don't know. Sometimes I get on my sneaky Twitter account that I use to spy on people, and I find myself getting sucked into the drama again. And I mean, I know there's good reasons to have debates with some of these people to show how hollow their arguments are and stuff like that, but my God, I've got so much more done since I got off Twitter.
Yes.
I've been so busy, and I've been really enjoying it as well, So, like, it's that feeling of, waking up in the morning and checking your Twitter feed and feeling your heart rate going up and getting angry and all that sort of thing,
It's so addictive, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Well, I'm glad, Graham. I'm
thank
glad
you, Twitter. Thank you for kicking me off.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you feel as if you are getting some more done, and it's probably better for your mental health, to be honest, to not be on Twitter. It would be for everyone's, I would have thought.
Yeah. And I kind of went out the way I wanted to, which was saying something that was actually factually true and getting banned for it. So I'm happy I did that. Listen, I better go because I better get on with the night. I'm getting a bit hungry. But is that?
Can I just add something real quick?
Yes, please.
Somebody in the comments was asking, if there's an update of what's going on in Canada. Sort of. Villain extraordinaire in Canada, somebody named Morgane Auger.
Yay! Yes, this is good news.
Yeah, did not win their election seat, which is great. But there's a concerted effort to stop motions that are moving slowly forward in Canada to ban conversion therapy of both the gay kind and the gender identity kind. So a lot of people in Canada are mobilizing to put a stop to that. There's a petition out there you can Google to find. And if you support LGBT Alliance Canada, they're going to be doing some work to mobilize against that.
That reminds me, Arty, how many LGBT alliances are there now? I know there's one in Canada, one in Mexico. There's a French one. Is there?
French, Norwegian, Brazil, US, UK, of course. Oh, I think we're up to 10 now. I think Spain as well. Yeah, it's like they're popping up like mushrooms all over the place.
Yeah. And Bev was saying that the Mexican group she met, they're very young. So there's a lot of younger people getting into it, which is great.
Yeah, and in Brazil too. They're using a lot of Instagram, and they're making memes, and they're really appealing to those young people. Yeah.
Good. Excellent. All right. Well, it was a joy as always. Let's see what this week brings. Probably a huge disaster to balance things out. But for the moment, let's enjoy the victories and have a lovely week.
Yeah. I'll talk to you next week.
Tuning in.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.